Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to the afternoon session of Making It. Before we get going, I'd just like to say to anyone who isn't a member of BAMM and is inspired to become one, that one of the huge benefits of being a member is that you receive our regular publications. So you get a copy of Grout magazine, I kid you not, 3 times a year, which is a really interesting overview of what people are doing in their Mosaic practice. And then we also produce a yearly journal called Andamento, where we have more sort of academic, but still very interesting and accessible articles that are helping to record the history of Mosaic in Britain and further afield, which is incredibly important for our practice going forward. And those are just 2 benefits. If you visit the BAMM website, you'll be able to join up today, and I hope you will. Welcome back, everyone, to this afternoon session. Both the following presentations coincidentally focus on the role mosaics play in recording social history. I'm really thrilled to be introducing Leigh Bird and Esther Johnson.
Hello.
Hi.
Esther contacted me a few years ago at the beginning of the campaign, and BAMM, and particularly Tracy Cartledge and I, have been involved ever since, writing letters of support and indignation in equal measure. Tracy is hosting the Q&A, and she is now BAMM Vice Chair.
Whoa.
Exactly. So the campaign is called Ships in the Sky. So please now watch the film, then buy the T-shirt which Tracy is modelling for you, which I'm sure, oh yes, Esther too.
White version.
Gorgeous. So let's watch the film. Thank you.
So, Esther, for people who haven't heard of Ships in the Sky, what's it all about?
Ships in the Sky is a 360-degree portrait of Hull's former central co-op, later BHS, smack bang in the centre of Hull, and also the 3 pieces of public art that was commissioned by the co-op for the building, made by an artist called Alan Boyson. The building was built between 1955 and 1964, and the mosaic on the front of the building is the largest in the country. So it's really a portrait of this particular building through time and how people experience this building and people's memories of their time connected with this building. It also represents British post-war history, as well as different themes such as cooperatism, public arts, the changing patterns of retail, women in the workplace, music and club culture. So it's a really it spans a lot of different themes, and the project encapsulates lots of different art forms as well, including oral history, film, photography, archive material, and people's actual memorabilia connected to the building.
So what inspired you to start the project?
I always was drawn to this beautiful mosaic. I thought it was just incredible. And, you can't miss it. It's bloody massive, 66 by 64 feet. So it's the largest mosaic in the country. It was one of the things, without sounding too pretentious, but it was one of the things that inspired me to want to go to art college. And on Saturdays, we'd often, when I was a kid, go into town, and as a treat, we'd go to Fletcher's little deli opposite Three Ships mural. And we'd look up at the mural and it'd be kind of a springboard for my dad to tell me stories of when he was at sea. So there was a real connection there with my family and my father's history connected to seafaring, which is also, one of the main histories of Hull. So I've always been inspired by this amazing building and this beautiful mosaic. And in around about 2016, it transpired that the mural was threatened with demolition. I was aware of the campaign that started to save the building. And that's when I got in touch with you and told you that I was hoping to do a project connected to the building, and it would just break my heart to see it demolished.
Yeah, that's right. And I was already involved at that stage in the campaign to save it. And at that stage, you and I said, right, let's do some more research into the history of the building. And it all developed from there. Going back to the campaign, I got involved back in November 2016, which was shortly after BHS vacated the building, and it being empty and retail being in the state that it was clear that it was vulnerable. And the group that I eventually got connected to, Hull Heritage Action Group, had applied to have the Three Ships Grade 2 listed, along with Hull Civic Society and the 20th Century Society, who are a national society who campaign for the preservation of 20th century buildings and its related art. And unfortunately, it got turned down, and Hull Heritage Action Group started a petition, and it didn't seem to do very much. And that's when I offered to help. I set up a Twitter account to try and launch the petition, get some signatures on it. And at that stage, there were 250 signatures on it in November 2016. And we ended up well over 7,000. And we got to 2,000 within a couple of weeks, and it was on Radio Humberside and Look North and so on. It all snowballed really quickly.
Was you surprised the national support and international support that was gained?
I think yes and no. I think the mural really is one of those Marmite things. People are either ambivalent about it or downright don't like it. But I think the vast majority do have a lot of feeling and passion for it because of the way that they connect to it, which is what your project's all about. So I think, when people do feel strongly about it, they really do feel strongly about it. And once there was a public presence, the petition really snowballed, and there was a lot of local feeling and local support from, people that you would hope would get involved. A lot of people in the arts and cultural community in Hull, all the grassroots folk, and then regular people on the street. And then I think when it really snowballed towards the end of the campaign was when the council had found asbestos in the building itself, and they felt at that time they had to presume that the mural was contaminated, and that was the death knell for it at the time. And literally in the space of just under 48 hours, we got a huge amount of support locally and nationally. We had 238 signatures on an open letter, and it really did encompass, again, lots of the people who had already supported the petition locally in Hull. We literally approached arts and architecture and museum bodies who'd supported the campaign on Twitter and said, would you sign this open letter? So there were lots of people from Hull who you really would hope would sign it. But along with that, people of national significance, Sir Nicholas Sirota from the Arts Council signed in a personal capacity, and then lots of different bodies like the 20th Century Society, the Modern Society, British Association of Modern Mosaic, and then people, journalists who specialise in art, architecture and design, so people like Rowan Moore and Hugh Perman from Reba, Tom Ravenscroft from Dezeen, John Doran from The Quietus, Tom Dickoff, Owen Hathaway. I could go on.
Whitechapel.
Yeah, exactly. And there were lots of museums and galleries, people from the V&A, from the William Morris. So, yeah, it was amazing.
That must have been really heartwarming to see so many, so much love out there for Hull and for Alan Boyson's work.
Yeah, exactly. It was really, really heartwarming. And I think it goes to show the sort of the spectrum of people whose lives it's touched, really, and also the regard that it's held in. When you're in Hull, you see it, and it's part of the fabric of the city, isn't it? And again, it goes back to what your project is about. It's a place marker. But I think for people who don't know the city or who have visited, it's just this huge, enormous, monumental, wonderful piece of art. So I think it's very easy sometimes for us when we're in Hull to kind of walk by it and sometimes forget about it. I think one of the things that the campaign has done, and to a certain extent, Hull 2017, it renewed our sense of civic pride and makes you look at what's there that you sometimes take for granted. Whereas, people who are new to the city or who are experts in that kind of field, they're just blown away by it.
Which really takes us round back again to kind of the heart of the project. It's really about how architecture and public art can be crucial, really crucial as for placemaking, I guess, in a city. For me, the Mosaic is that emblem of Hull's history and an emblem of a place and people's histories, experiences connected to a very particular place. Tell us about why Alan Boyson's work in Hull in particular is so unique.
Well, Hull is the only place that has 3 works by him in one building. So even of what little survives of his work, it was the only place to have that. And it's certainly the only place to still have it. And also it represents 3 of the most typical forms of his artwork. He was a very versatile artist, and Historic England actually cited him alongside the muralist William Mitchell as being a very versatile muralist and artist who could turn his hand to anything. And people like Boyson and Mitchell, they work post-war with developers of buildings, and they could be ecclesiastical buildings, banks, places of commerce, to solve problems in a way, and for decorative arts. And post-war optimism, as you mentioned before, it was a time of, Hull had been devastated. We all know it was the second most bombed city outside of London. But post-war art and architecture just renewed cities with a sense of optimism, and a lot of companies like the Co-op and people like John Lewis, for example, they decorated the buildings with a great sense of pride to involve the community, and the whole building was a prime example of that. Boyson was quite prolific. Between 1959 and 1996, he created 48 public works of art, but only 18 of those survive, and whole art forms were lost. But there's the 3 that are in Hull, the Mosaic, and then the huge ceramic fish mural up outside the nightclub, and then a sponge printed tile. They were his 3 most common works. And 18 of the surviving 48 artworks, 8 of those are already damaged. So there are only actually 10 good intact artworks by Alan Boyson in the UK, and we've got 2.5 of them in Hull.
Amazing.
I know, 2.5. The sponge print mural, which is up in the nightclub, that was rediscovered thanks to you in this project, because when you interviewed Philip Andrew, the architect, afterwards, Chris Marsden, who's a brilliant Alan Boyson historian, he went with Philip through some of Philip's archive, and they found a slide showing the 3rd mural. And it's been found by the council, but only half of it's there, and what is there is being painted over, but paint can be removed. So we've got half a mural potentially there.
Yeah, that was thrilling, wasn't it? To think that from all those probing questions with Philip Andrew, and then him getting so excited talking about his work on the building and how that led to him revisiting his own archive and then finding another Alan Boyson. I mean, amazing.
Yeah, and it kind of brings you back round to, what the project is about again, because some of it is about the memories and some of it is about the things that you find. I mean, for you, what are some of the favourite finds that you've discovered through the project?
Involving people in the project is a massive part of what it's all about. I mean, it's been significant to many people, probably in as equally many ways. So we've had contributions from construction workers. And I remember one contribution from a plumber on the building, a guy called Brian Ellertson. When he was working on the building, he remembers meeting Alan Boyson when he was creating the fish mural. And he chatted with Alan for a while. And then he realised that it was actually Alan who had blocked all the drains from the marble chippings when he was cutting up the marble. On the fish mural, there's like seaweed fronds at the bottom, and he was cutting away at those marble, and all the chippings went and blocked the drains. So Brian had this amazing memory of meeting him and then having to clear all the drains. And these are the kind of, the little bits of history that get forgotten about or don't get recorded, but they say a lot about a time and a place. Another amazing contribution we've had is from a former co-op employee called Ian Lees, who worked in the Jameson Street, the main branch, in the 80s. And bless Ian, he's basically donated everything he has from that period connected to the store, from his overalls to his payment slips to the co-op staff newsletters. And he also has some beautiful Polaroids that were taken at the time. And he remembers the time very fondly. He loved working there. Other things that we have are memories from the Sky Sounds, which were a band that used to play in the Skyline Ballroom. And they were a bit of a one-hit wonder. They had a single that they released called No Matter Where I Wander. The B-side was called Two Timer, written by Bobby Fischer and Diana Lane. So I was able to speak with a few of the surviving members of that band. One of the singers, she went on to be in another girl band later on called Mandy and the Girlfriends. So it really taps into Hull's pop history in the 60s. But also after that, we've had memories of people who used to visit the various clubs in the building. So from the Skyline Ballroom, then later Bailey's throughout the 70s, and then late 70s to the early 90s, Romeo's and Juliet's. We had one memory of the infamous drugs bust, which led to the closure of Romeo's and Juliet's. Meeting Philip Andrew, who we've already mentioned, the architect of the building. He was based in the architect's main offices in Manchester, and he's just a wonder just to be able to see his original drawings. And that's one thing from looking in the co-op archive in Manchester. It's quite difficult to find a lot of original architects' drawings and maps, etc. So it was absolutely thrilling to be able to see Philip's personal archive. And then leading from that, somebody else who was an electrician on the building. He has donated around about 80 odd maps and drawings and plans of the building, and also fittings for the building. So they are really absolutely unique. So many different memories. There's 3 wonderful women who were co-op window dressers all together in the 60s. They told us about competition they had with window dressers from other department stores in the city. They told us about the infamous co-op grotto that they used to decorate every year, and the various different hijinks that they got into. But one of the lovely things is that they're all still friends today, and that friendship really started at the co-op. And I think that's like testament to the building. It seems like people do hold it in real fondness, their time there, whether that was working there, shopping there, or clubbing there. One of the things we have done with interviewing and all these contributions from people, we've held various different small satellite exhibitions in libraries around Hull. We've also had recording days for people to come in and record their memories. And then we did a workshop in oral history recording at the library, which was specifically for the absolutely cultured volunteers. And we had a lovely memory from one of those volunteers called Elsie. And actually, sadly, Elsie has now passed away. And that's, again, just points to another element of the project, is that a lot of these memories that we are collecting are also from generations that we're now losing. We're trying to capture things that might be lost otherwise.
Why did you choose the title Ships in the Sky?
Well, the title's really inspired by Walden, by Henry David Thoreau. The quote is, "If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them." But that actually play on a French idiom, building castles in Spain, which they thought in the 1300s, when this idiom was first recorded, that was an impossible thing. I think later they changed it to build on air with no foundation. I like Disillusion to kind of trying to do something that's impossible to accomplish. So building castles in the air, so entertaining kind of a daydream that might never come to pass. And my granddad, he used to always say to my mum that Humber Bridge would never be built. But there it is, you know, it's achievement and it's built. And it's the same with the mural, I think. It may never have been built, but it's this massive symbol, I think, of achievement, the sheer scale of it, as well as the artistry of it. And I think the thought of losing it made me think of this idiom and of Thoreau's quote.
And isn't there an old mariner's logic about the reflection of water a mirage?
Yeah, at sea, there is an instance of mirage or Fata Morgana in which you can see what looks like a ship slightly hovering above the sea. So there's that link as well. But yes, there's the very literal link of we see three ships floating in the sky up above us in the mural at 66 foot high. So there's that literal connection, but there's also a metaphor there that I think is quite magical, and I like that idea of championing the dreamer and what can be achieved.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, you've got that lovely idea, and then you've also got all the more tangible things that people associate with a mural. I think it means different things to different people depending on their age and experience. There's lots of facets to that. And for example, you said at the beginning that the mural was commissioned by the co-op for the front of their store, and their brief at the time was to unite the community through art. And of course, at the time, Hull's fishing industry was absolutely at its height, and actually we now know on the cusp of its decline, sadly. But Hull's been a port since the 1300s. So I think some people look at it and look back fondly on that and think, well, it's a symbol of a port and what the city, it's one of the things it's known for. But some people it's a ship and that's as much as it is. And yet I think for a lot of people, again an older generation who did live through the war or were relatively young afterwards, it is that symbol of hope, because the original co-op on that site was bombed in 1941 and this store didn't open until 1963, and there was they called it the prefab, didn't they? That's right. The building was it was an evolution, wasn't it? There was a grand plan for it, but it kind of evolved. And then, we've ended up with this thing of beauty. But for me, the way I look at it is it brings back my memories. You talked about your dad. One of my youngest memories is sitting with my dad and him tracing with his fingers the word Hull in the masts. And we now know that that's a kind of urban myth that it spells Hull in the masts. It does, but it wasn't intentional. It's become this apocryphal thing, but it definitely does represent our maritime heritage and the city's sort of phoenix from the ashes wartime experience. And Hull has got this wonderful, the Yorkshire Maritime City ambitions, and all the funding to do that and all the plans for it are absolutely amazing. But if you were coming into the city to go round the trail, as it eventually will be laid out, you get off the train at Paragon Station as you walk up past Hammonds. Let's hope that the wherewithal is there to keep the mural, because what better a greeting could you have as a visitor to the city to see the city's biggest artistic representation of our maritime heritage?
And also of, as you say, the phoenix and the ashes and the industry and the achievement of that. It was one of the biggest co-op stores of its time, wasn't it? And no expenses spared on the outfitting. Ebony and beautiful hard woods used throughout, and, sprung dance floor, this amazing curved concrete dome over the Skylane Ballroom, the only other one in the world at the time at the Kremlin. It's pretty incredible, and all of that right in the centre of Hull.
Oh yeah, I guess that links back to the fact that the mural is the emblem for the project. So what was it about it that made you choose it as the emblem for the project?
I see it as the heart of the city. We've talked about it symbolising heritage of place and contributors to the project and participants. I wanted to have something, a little, not exactly a reward, but a little keepsake that made them part of it. So our very own Blue Peter style badge became the kind of exchange, if you like. You give us a memory that we can record for posterity, and here's a little bit of Hull in return.
So what's next for Ships in the Sky then, Esther?
So moving on from the oral history recordings that we've done and all the research to date, as well as the charity initiative t-shirt, pending funding, we're hoping to have 2 exhibitions. One which is more based on all of those oral histories and people's ephemera and things that they've donated to the project. And then another exhibition which is more arts focused, so new work that's generated through the project, like an artist film and potentially some works of art by Alan Boyson in there. And we're also hoping to have a symposium that looks at some of those themes that I mentioned earlier that are present in the project. And we're hoping that that will take place later in 2021, and all the information will be on a website and on Twitter. We just really hope that people continue to submit things for the exhibition as well as memories, etc. So please do keep in touch.
So if anybody wants to find out more about Ships in the Sky, where can they hear the memories and how can they connect with us?
The project has a website. If you just Google Ships in the Sky, you'll come across the website. We also have a Twitter page, Ships in the Sky 63. It's the same for Instagram, and it's Ships in the Sky Hull for Facebook. You can hear an edited selection of some of the memories on the Ships in the Sky website. There's a memories page, but also we have full interviews on the Untold Hull website. Again, just search for Untold Hull. And we've worked with Hull libraries to be able to record those. And we now have, it's getting up to around about 100 interviews of various different periods of the building's history. And throughout lockdown, we've actually been releasing one of those memories every Monday. There's quite a lot there online, publicly available now.
During the research and development of the project, Leigh and I co-authored an article for The Modernist magazine for an issue that was titled High. So we obviously talked about the massiveness of the three ships. Co-op News also wrote a lovely article about the project, and I wrote an article for Tribune magazine called Hull's Ships in the Sky. I've been interviewed by various publications, newspapers, radio channels, and also the BBC came to film our launch event that we had at Hull City Library. A Hull publication called Critical Fish, which is an arts and literary magazine. They published an article that Leigh and I again wrote about the project and all the different various elements. And a lovely element of that publication was a pull-out spread in the centre by a Hull artist called Jake, who had access to all of the research undertaken for the project and the timelines of the building, and he created this lovely illustrated kind of comic book style timeline of the building. During lockdown, we undertook a charity initiative that we called Fish and Ships, and this was really just to keep in touch with people and really to try and do something practical to help. I drew my own illustrations inspired by both Boyson's three ships and his fish, and those were printed onto t-shirts, a tote bag, and also a vinyl turntable slip mat. And this was in collaboration with a company called We Are One of 100, who specialise in collaborations with artists and musicians to create limited edition t-shirts. And that was just brilliant. We had such great engagement, and we were able to raise funds for UK food banks through the Trussell Trust and FareShare. And it was also really an opportunity to keep in touch with people during lockdown and keep the momentum and the conversation going about our love for the three ships and Alan Boyson's work in Hull. As part of the campaign for Fish and Ships, I created a short film that was the North Ship poem by Philip Larkin, and I invited 6 different writers connected to Hull to each recite and film themselves at home during lockdown a verse from the North Ship. We had Rhys Shearsmith, we had BBC broadcaster Matthew Sweet, we had the Hull poet Dean Wilson, and also Vicky Foster, and John Godber, the playwright, theatre maker, and also Hull writer Jennifer Hodgson. We'll finish by showing you that short film.
I saw 3 ships go sailing by, over the sea, the lifting sea, and the wind rose in the morning sky, and one was rigged for a long journey.
The first ship turned towards the west, over the sea, the running sea, and by the wind was all possessed, and carried to a rich country.
The second ship turned towards the east, over the sea, the quaking sea, and the wind hunted it like a beast, to anchor in captivity.
The third ship drove towards the north, over the sea, the darkening sea, but no breath of wind came forth, and the deck shone frostily.
The northern sky rose high and black over the proud, unfruitful sea. East and west, the ships came back, happily or unhappily.
But the third went wide and far into an unforgiving sea, under a fire-spilling star, and it was rigged for a long journey.
Well, first of all, thank you. That was a wonderful, fascinating insight into the project, the Social History Project, and also the campaign to save the mural. We've had so many questions coming in. First of all, can I just ask viewers out there, the attendees, if you'd like to add any more questions, do so on the Q&A, which is at the bottom of the screen. But can I ask you, Leigh, where are we at with the campaign right now? And what's your personal view on what's going to now happen to the building and the artworks?
Oh, big question. So where we are with the campaign, the mural was listed after a few years. We started in November 2016 as we applied for listing, and it was turned down quickly within weeks. And then very quickly, as you heard in the film, we started an appeal. And when I say we, I'm a member of Hull Heritage Action Group. And that basically dragged on, lots of efforts were made, and it all came to a head when the Hull City Council, who now own the building, found asbestos in the building and were wanting to get it out, and they had to presume that the mural was contaminated. And really the council were presented with a fait accompli. The only thing they felt they could do was vote to demolish. And thankfully, DCMS, it all came to a head, and DCMS and Historic England granted listing in November 2019. So since then, Hull Heritage Action Group have been working with the council. We have been trying to work with the council to move things forward. We wanted to help in a genuine way and collaborate. And also, obviously, Historic England are very heavily involved in that as well. And so we're almost on the periphery, and the council have invited us to collaborate, and we found 3 world-leading asbestos and mosaic experts who all offered their time free of charge to go in and look at the building and advise. That's dragged on. We're literally only just getting to a point where it's looking as though we're going to be able to get into the building. It's been hampered by COVID, understandably, but it's gone on too long. So we're at a state now where we very much hope that our experts can get in and offer an alternative view about what could potentially be done to help save the mural, or perhaps the council have come up with their own ideas, because it's listed, they've had to investigate more deeply and further, and they've been guided by Historic England to do that. So I think we'll know within the next 6 months where we are. That's my personal view. You know, although this has dragged on, I think we'll know one way or the other. My personal view of where we are is The council have said we'll collaborate with you, we'll talk to you, but we have to do most of the chasing to say where are we up to, Hull Heritage Action Group. So it's feeling and has felt a little bit one-sided. I might be being uncharitable, and that might have been because of COVID. I don't know. It's stepping up again, but I still feel as though we're chasing. And if I'm honest, I think there are some opportunities for genuine collaboration have been missed. You know, that there have been lots of investigations going on where the council has had to fund cherry pickers. You know, there's no reason why our experts couldn't have been approached and said, we've hired this kit. Can you guys come along that day? Would you like to do your investigation then? Instead, it's all been a lot of, we need to do this first, we need to do that first. So my personal fear is that we might be presented with a fait accompli again at the 11th hour. We found all this out, you know, and we have a very small window to do our bit of work. Now, if in 6 months' time or however long it takes, this conversation is thrown back in my face and, you know, I'm wrong, I will be the happiest person in the world and I'll be happy to look a fool. I don't know. It could be that the council are looking at it from a certain angle, and because they have at one time felt that they had to say, we need to demolish this now because it's a public safety issue. And if it turns out that they can save it, there is an element where I think they will want to manage how that information's been put forward. So that could also be the case, and I could be being uncharitable. But either way, you know, there's been a lot of work from a lot of people in this here for a long time. So fingers crossed, I'm wrong, and we've got it saved. They have said they would save the fish mural, and they have said that once they could get into the area where we rediscovered the sponge print mural, they could tell us whether they could save what's left of that. So that's one of the questions that we'll be asking them soon. So we know that one, hopefully two of them are definitely safe, but the big one that we all really, really want is still in the balance, but fingers crossed.
Wonderful. Yes, that's great. So many questions have come in, as you may have seen, and people are very interested to know about your engagement with the public. It's obviously been a very successful social history campaign, and you've managed to help people to explore personal and collective memories and their connections to this iconic work of public art. Do you think that the social value of public arts is often underestimated by the authorities?
Shall I answer that one?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think what you find is often on buildings, particularly of this era, post-war and modernist buildings, it's often the public art that is the first to go. But the thing is, I think they underestimate the massive, massive value they have for placemaking and for people's real, genuine, close connection to a place. I mean, as I said in that film, you know, I've loved this for as long as I can remember, and it's had a massive impact on my life. And one of the things, however pretentious it may sound, one of the things that really made me want to study art and appreciate kind of abstraction and craft and materials, etc. I mean, I think the thing with the mural is, I mean, it goes back to humble beginnings, if you like. You know, it's commissioned by the co-op for everybody, for working people, but for everybody in society. And that's one of the absolutely things I really love about it. And the brief to Alan Boyson was, you know, to art that connects to the community. And I think as the memories and things that we've collected for the project demonstrate, it absolutely has done that, and it's kind of continues to do that. And I think, you know, despite this building being built 50s, 60s, you know, it's still connecting with people now. So there's something to be said, you know, for the longevity of this, of their vision, if you like. I think I've strayed off the question slightly there, but I mean, we've been absolutely bowled over by people's enthusiasm and generosity, actually, you know, sharing their memories, you know, some very formative memories, especially those connected with the 3 different clubs in the building. I think Leigh, I don't think she'll mind me saying this, I think Leigh got stood up under the mural once.
I did. Yeah. Insert swear word.
So, you know, it's really connected on many levels, you know, shopping history, women in the workplace history, club history, music history, art history, the changes in retail and shopping, ideas and the ethos of cooperatism, which I think we need now in this world more than ever. So I think that's one of the things that's connected with people as well, that this kind of multi-pronged approach, if you like, all of these different themes. I'm going to hand it back to you because there must be other questions.
There are lots of questions. So I'll give you a question from Tamara Froud, who wants me to ask you. You seem to not only have collected an amazing amount of related paraphernalia, but also you've reconnected people through the project. So apart from saving the mural, how important do you think the process has been in helping the campaign gather more momentum? And about those reconnections that have occurred throughout the project?
Well, I'll start, but then I'll hand over to Leigh. But I think one of the things great that's what Tamara's saying, and the you know, about the connection with people. That is what is at the heart of the project. It's really about people reconnecting with familiar surroundings, but maybe reassessing or looking at them, a familiar place, in a slightly different way, and seeing the kind of the value attached to that, to locality, to the heritage of a place. And I'm going to hand you over to Leigh to the next bit about linking it with the campaign, or how it might have helped with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, a little of that had started in a way in that, for example, you saw a picture of a pie. So when it was all at its height, before Ships in the Sky, and it had really just started rolling, people would do things like, I'm going to bake the pie, you know, up the 3 ships and all that kind of thing, which is fantastic. And there's an actor, Matt Sutton, and he'd mocked up a brilliant image of it, projecting a film onto it and saying we could use it as a music stage and as a film stage, and you know, people's imaginations were going wild. But I think following on from that and following the call out from Ships in the Sky, there's all the sorts of memories that we've heard, and then it's connected with people locally and further afield. So we saw the critical fish issue, and that was wonderful because it was really kind of based around that whole issue was based around the ships in the sky and the timeline that you saw pictorially. And we've seen lots of artists re-engage, not just on the memory side, but with physical, you know, output. So paintings, drawings, fabric,
a song.
A song. We've had some music. Poetry. Helen Angel, who's a wonderful poet who engages with concrete and public art, and she's written amazing poems about motorway bridges and all kinds of things. You know, she came to Hull and she sat in a cafe and she looked at it and she connected with a waitress, and the whole poem links through, and it's called Boyson's Boats, and it connects. So there were wonderful strands all the way through. And what that does, I think, is Ships in the Sky and the mural campaign have become very much connected. We've almost had to draw a line, haven't we? When we're doing certain things, Esther, we say, no, this is about the arts project, but I can't help but not be involved sometimes with my campaigner head on. So when something exciting happens, we can share information between the 2 Twitter accounts. And even things like Esther, as part of her project, has been documenting the building. So, for example, when she first started, she took some beautiful close-up photographs of the mural. And then recently she was there only a couple of weekends ago, and you've looked at some more. And we have this whole archive of information. And I looked at it the other day, and I can actually see quite a big deterioration in the couple of years since that first set of photographs were taken, where, you know, at the time it was over 50 years old, and there was some missing tesserae, but it looked blooming good for 50 years old. Whereas in the last couple of years, there's actually been a hideous amount of deterioration. And so from my campaigning sort of head, not my ships in the sky head, but my campaigning head looks at that, and that's another thing that, you know, goes back to the campaign, and it troubles me. But because of what Esther's doing, she's doing that from an arts point of view, but I know that I can say to Esther, can I look at those, because I want to actually see section by section what's deteriorating where, and I want to be able to ask questions as to why the sudden deterioration. There's a real link, a whole cycle.
And I think on a larger scale, I mean, in a lot of my work, I'm really interested in looking at and documenting and kind of challenging and reassessing maybe stories that aren't documented in the history books so much, or aren't represented in archives as much. So, I mean, with this, it's been great that the project is quite ambitious and got lots of different sections, but the first phase, which has been about collecting those oral histories, has been in connection with Hull Central Libraries and funded by the James Reckitt Library Trust. So we've got that other connection with the community, and, you know, with the communities that they're working with in different areas of Hull, and we've been able to go out to all of different communities, so and to collect those stories that and hopefully at some stage we can package those in some way and then put them into the archive, put them into Hull History Centre, so that it fills maybe a gap that's there. I certainly found that when I was looking in the co-op archives, there was quite a gap in terms of architectural plans, and from the project I've been able to find actual plans of the building. So again, it's trying to put, you know, give us a fuller perspective of history, I suppose.
I think as well, going back to what you just mentioned about James Reckitt Library Trust and the library, as a patron of the project, they've been massively generous, and so have the people who've contributed and shared the memories. But Ships in the Sky and the campaign we've benefited so much from so many generous people, you know, in particular people like Christopher Marsden, who's the Alan Boyson expert. He's documented Alan's life and works, but he's worked with us from a campaign perspective, giving us his photographs so that we could use it when we were writing to DCMS. He set up interviews with Philip Andrew, and we've had so many people like Chris who've gone above and beyond in terms of supporting Ships in the Sky, but also in terms of supporting the mural campaign. You know, as Alex mentioned at the opening, you know, way back when, I approached them and said, you know, would you write us a letter? Would you tweet the campaign? And so many people have done that. The Manchester Modernist Society, the 20th Century Society have been amazing. You know, there are so many individuals and bodies who've been brilliant. Yeah.
And the letter was amazing to see the love out there. Yeah,
because that was put together so quickly and furtively, because we wanted to go to the council and make a big splash. So we had to approach everybody, and people turned themselves inside out to make it happen. Yeah. Esther being one of them. Yeah.
Excellent, well done. Well, we are still receiving questions constantly here, so it's obviously really resonating with people, which is wonderful. I've got one here from Sarah, who has said, so much of value to the public is undervalued by those who are making the decisions, and mainly because they cannot put a price on that value. You know, it's down to money and not the value that we're talking about now and here.
Yeah.
She says, after all, the developers stand to gain more by knocking it down and rebuilding. What do you think? David Tootle says history is our identity. We must resist those who want to pull down the past. Those who would do this are greedy developers. They're our version of the Taliban and ISIS. You know, this is the strength of feeling out there, or where our value is as the public, and the value by the people who are looking at the bottom line, the pounds and the pence.
Yeah, it's such a difficult one, isn't it? And I can see a perspective about, you know, regeneration in terms of economy for a place, but sometimes I think the fixes that are come up, the solutions, if you like, that aren't necessarily a long-term solution. And I think it's the long-term solution is what we need to think about and invest in. What does it mean to be a member of a community in a place? It's kind of reassessing what our values are. That was a bit of a waffle, but I think it's balancing and trying to satisfy both of those things, and not just about the business model.
Yeah, I also think when you look back historically at the timing of all this, Hull City Council now own the building, and they spent a significant amount of money buying it from a company who are notorious land bankers. So, you know, they did something good there. And also, if you think about their ambitions for Hull in the City of Culture year, they'd already embarked down a route, and they would have had a plan for that City of Culture year well before this campaign came into play. And then similarly, Hull is also the maritime city, and there's been a huge lottery grant for that. And they've got several brilliant projects to really make the most of the sort of the physical attributes in the city in terms of museums and Spare Lightship and the Arctic Corsair and so on. And they're fantastic. But again, they will have all been set in stone. Now, had the timing been different, I really do wonder whether the council would have incorporated the Saving the Mosaic as part of the whole Maritime City project, because it's the most obvious thing to do. You know, as I said in the film, it's the city's biggest artistic representation, and as the City of Culture, why on earth wouldn't they wanted to have done that? So if they could have wrapped that up in a historical bid, you know, I'd like to think they would have done, because it you know, it's just such an obvious thing to do. But, you know, to give them, you know, benefit of the doubt, I think that the timing of all of that would have been difficult for them.
I mean, at the end of the day, the public realm and public art within the public realm has, as was said in the film, a massive emotional you know, pull for and I think this particular building has for generations actually now, and I think you can't put a price tag, I think, on the emotional connection of something like Three Ships. I mean, I really hope that it is going to be able to be saved. I'm trying to keep optimistic, because to me, the mural has always been an optimistic image and one of hope, and that's the side that we're trying to keep on, and doing everything in our capacity to try and highlight that.
Yeah,
because it's magical, isn't it?
It is magical. Yeah,
and we need magic as well as I don't know, restaurants and pubs and all of those other things in a city centre. We also need poetry.
Yeah, an identity.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really resonated with people, but we have reached the point now where we're going to have to just wrap up the questions for now.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure. The conversation can carry on social media. Everybody by now has probably got the links to the ships in the sky, and the other links you might need to discuss with Leigh and Esther online. They're also on the BAMM website for convenience. So lovely. Thank you very much. We're going to
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have a break and we'll be back with the next presentation at 3 o'clock.